Hi, thank you so much for joining my podcast series, which is called Formidable Females in Future Flight. I'm meeting women from across the future of aviation and aerospace in order to inspire more women and girls to consider this career for themselves. And I'm very pleased to be joined today by Julie Garland. She's the founder and CEO of Avtrain, which is a world leading pilot trainer for drones. Julie, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm really good, Joanne. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And I have to say, happy St. Patrick's Day. So it's Lá Féile Pórig.
Thank you very much. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. And thank you for joining me from Ireland. First of all, just in case anybody in our audience is not yet familiar, could you tell me a little bit about Avtrain, please, the business that you started?
Sure. So our mission at Avtrain is to encourage prolific drone operations, but to keep the skies safe through the highest standards of training and certification. Our primary goal is looking at compliance verification with the regulations for operators. So ensuring that they are compliant, and if they aren't compliant, then leading them down the path to compliance. So what we do is we do pilot and operator training and certification. So we train pilots both on the theoretical knowledge portions around the regulations, and we also do practical assessments. And then we also do a lot of consultancy for companies, large, small, government agencies, private entities, in order to achieve this prolific drone operations. And the other side of our business is encouraging people into the industry and making sure that the industry grows at the rate that it should be growing at. So it's actually educating, particularly government departments, local councils, things like that, around the use that drones can be to them. So we live by the 3Ds. So if it's dull, if it's dirty, or if it's dangerous, then a drone should be doing it. So it's really getting that message out there as well. So we've got various different facets of the business, and the main one, as I say, is compliance verification, training, certification of operators, carrying out consultancy then, but really spreading the good news that drones are here, they're here to stay, and that they're a huge benefit to society.
Brilliant. That sounds like an incredibly worthy mission, especially as the skies become busier. And there are so many ways in which you say that actually drones can help us all to be safer, so long as they are operated safely themselves. And Julie, you've had a really interesting career path that brings you to this stage. I know that you started life as an apprentice, and you've also been a pilot and a barrister before becoming a founder. And could you tell me a little bit about your career path?
Yeah, sure. So I started back in the last century. I started fixing airplanes. I was an apprentice with Aer Lingus, our national airline, and I went from there. And I originally I had always wanted to be a pilot, but this was a way I saw to becoming a pilot as well. So it's really about learning your trade and learning your craft. I started in Aer Lingus back in 1991 as an apprentice, and I served my time, qualified. I actually hold an EASA Part 66B1 license now. And from there I went to work with, I spent 6 years, actually on the hangar floor and on line maintenance. And then I went to ASL. It's now ASL Airlines. It was Hunting Cargo Airlines at the time, then became our contractors, and is now ASL as a line maintenance controller. And from there, with the support of Hugh Flynn, who's always been a mentor to me throughout my career, was the chief executive now, is the group chairman now of ASL, I decided that I wanted to take up my dream, which was to become a pilot. So I did some of my pilot training in South Africa. I went down to Johannesburg and did my private pilot's license and some hour building there, and then came back here out to Weston Airport, out to the National Flight Centre in Weston. And I did my commercial, I did my airline transport pilot license, I did my flight instructor's rating, and I started flight instructing. And I went from there, I did my FAA ATP as well. So I did some corporate flying as well on citations and things like that. And then I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity with Air Aran. It was Padraig O'Cady was running Air Aran at the time, and got an opportunity to start there as a first officer on the ATR. Went on to become a captain, line training captain. I was also the flight safety officer there. And then I went into CityJet as a direct entry captain. And CityJet was very different. It was away from home a lot. It was, flying all around Europe now rather than the regional airports that we've been familiar with and going from a turboprop onto a jet. Still loads of challenges. It was absolutely fantastic career move though. And I was also type rating instructor with CityJet as well. And then I decided that I wasn't going to retire from the left-hand seat of an airline, and that it was, while I loved it and certainly the best view from an office you're ever going to get, and it would have been a passion and a dream, I did feel that it wasn't going to sustain me throughout the rest of my career until I came to retirement age. So I decided at that time to study law. I hadn't planned on actually becoming a barrister straight away. I planned on going back flying again, but recession hit. I studied law, became a barrister, got called to the bar in 2010. And at that time, CityJet offered me continuing leave of absence. So I decided to devil, and which is where you take on a master, and it's like an apprenticeship in the trade of being a barrister. And the first time I stood up in a courtroom, I just went, this is me. This is for me. I absolutely love it. My other half the time said, you're being paid to argue. Why wouldn't you? So I just, but I did, I loved it. But I really, after starting with that, I really started to miss being involved in aviation. I spent 5 years at the law library. And then I went back in as the director of compliance for Norwegian Airlines. And so I got back in, the smell of Jet A1 in the morning, you just can't beat it. But I think it's the combination of all of those careers that brought me to this really super innovative industry, because it's back to the technical coupled with the operational experience. And then when you bring in the legal quagmire that we can sometimes find ourselves in, it's those three separate, very individual, distinct career paths that have now converged to really bring us to Avtrain and to establishing Avtrain.
That really is an incredible path. I feel very inspired already. You've really pushed the boundaries in so many different ways. And Avtrain sounds like a fascinating business. And can you tell me a little bit about the typical clients? What kind of work are you doing just now?
Yeah, so as Avtrain, we're an EASA recognised entity. So that means we have an approval by the Irish Aviation Authority to carry out certain tasks, some of those being compliance verification for levels of robustness within operational safety objectives for drone operators. And another part of it then is carrying out the actual training of drone pilots. So, but some of our typical clients, like we're very fortunate with the clients we have. We are working very closely with the Irish Coast Guard and implementing new equipment into the Irish Coast Guard, where they have thermal capabilities, but they've also brought in the new M30T, which is a DJI, but it's waterproof. So it means it's this operational capability of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and in Ireland, we tend to, wind and rain are definitely features in our weather system. So having an aircraft that builds up their capability and competence. And we also work here with a lot of city councils, and we look at, it's not just about implementing drones and drones for good. It's about looking at their strategy going forward as to how they incorporate drones across multiple different departments at various different skill levels and to various different degrees. We also then we're working with 3 airlines. One of them, there's going to be amazing news coming out next week about them being granted their LUC, which is their Light Unmanned Aircraft Systems Operator Certificate. So this is an airline, current AOC holder, large freight operator, who will be making that announcement next week. And we've been working really closely with them over the last 6 months or so for the grant of that. We also work with a Ukrainian airline that has set up an operation here in Ireland, who were carrying out their mission is all around aid and aid distribution, and they were operating in South Sudan and Uganda, and unfortunately they've had to repatriate a lot of their pilots back to their home country to carry out aid missions in the Ukraine, but they're also applying for their LUC. And then some of our other clients, some of them are looking around the delivery space. We work closely with Mana. We're working with Sprite. So as I said, part of it is actually bringing people into Ireland. We have a really positive regulatory environment here in Ireland, very positive aviation regulator in the Irish Aviation Authority. We also have what's called the IDA, who are out around the globe attracting business into Ireland to explain to people why Ireland is such a good place to do business. So we very much support them in that mission, and then look to get the regulatory approvals for any operators that come in here. So a day-to-day is so wide and varied. We can go from anything from somebody who wants to survey a building, to do thermal imaging of a roof and heat escape, to somebody who wants to, search and rescue, and all the way up to, large airlines looking at incorporating, getting into the eVTOL space and having that specific category authorization, so that when we have the regulatory environment for the certified category, that they're only stepping over a hedge rather than jumping over huge ditches to get there. So it's such an exciting space. But we look at, I suppose, the environment now as to where we can operate in the regulatory environment we have, but very much with a really significant nod to the future, which is the eVTOL, advanced air mobility, innovative air mobility, urban air mobility, whichever moniker you want to put on it. And we're looking towards the pilot training then for eVTOL into the future, and also the regulatory approvals for operators into the future.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's great to hear what exciting work you're doing in your business. And I know that the airline and aerospace industries have deep roots in Ireland, as does technology itself. So to see all of those things coming together in advanced air mobility and in Avtrain is such a lovely thing to see. And I'm so happy for all of the success and the excitement that you're seeing in your business today. I wondered, what inspired you originally to follow this career path?
Yeah, so I suppose the earliest memory that I have really of a very positive decision being made about what I want to be is when I was 8 years old and my grandfather brought me into a flight simulator. And I flew, it was a BAC, a BAC 111 at the time, that had a simulator out in Dublin Airport. And I got to sit in the seat and fly the airplane. And, to be able to do that at 8 years of age was absolutely life-changing. And I think there's been figures throughout my life who've influenced what I do, but I do think really that first influence where my grandfather, he didn't see me he saw me as a person who would become a pilot, not as a female or somebody who would have barriers or restrictions in their way about actually fulfilling that dream. So I think from that early age, and I do think when we try to inspire females into roles that can often be very male dominated, this is what we need, is this see it and be it. And not to have this, you're a female, you therefore need something different. It's about you're somebody who's ambitious to be a pilot or an engineer or an air traffic, whatever it may be, and that you inspire those people. So that was certainly my earliest influence was back in at 8 years of age flying the simulator. And then I left school. There was no opportunity at the time to become a pilot. My parents weren't in a position to fund me, going down a self-improver route. And it was actually my dad saw the advertisement in a local newspaper about Aer Lingus taking on apprentices. And he approached me about it. And he said, do you think? And I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. But again, it was a male figure in my life who didn't see any difference, or the fact that I was a female would in any way preclude this as an opportunity for me. So I applied. There was over 7,000 applicants at the time, and I was very fortunate to get taken on. And that really set me on a trajectory where you just get on with doing things. And so I think it was those really positive influences that I had in my life from that really early age, from that nurturing as well.
Yes, yeah. It sounds like that landed at just the right time, where you probably hadn't even considered what do girls do, what do boys do. You were so young at 8 years old, and to have that incredible inspiration from your granddad and then onwardly from your dad, I can see really changed the course of your life, or certainly set you on the right path, followed by lots of hard work of your own. Yeah, I wondered, how do you find being female in this sector? Do you think that being female has informed any of the choices that you made, or do you think you've just gone about everything regardless of that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Particularly just following from International Women's Day and, the fact that we still need to have International Women's Day. It's fantastic to celebrate and I know, and yourself with the formidable females and all of these, but the fact that we still have to celebrate this and we still have to push it out there about being different. Teams are made up of diverse people who come from every walk of life, every gender, sexuality, religion, colour, creed. And that's where we get good decisions and we get positive team building and we get all of these things. I would say that I think during my life, I've never looked at it as you're a female, so you can't do it. I've just considered the roles and looked at them as things that I wanted to do, things that I wanted to achieve, and I've gone and done it. And I do think sometimes, you know, we have certain traits as females. One is sometimes being too self-critical, over analysis of what we're doing. We tend to look for 100% in things, in certain things. And, you know, it's a really common thing that in job applications that a female will look at a role and they will say, oh, I only fulfill half of those. Whereas a male will look at that and go, I'm going to put in for that and see what happens. You know, and sometimes we can be too self-critical, too over analytical. And I think that can really stand to us though as well at times, because we do look at self-analysis. So I don't think I've ever considered myself, I'm a female and this is a male dominated. I've just gone on with it. And I do think there's certain times, it's a very different world now though. And I think we need to be far more aware, and people shouldn't have to go through maybe the trials and tribulations that I certainly would have had to have gone through, particularly on a hangar floor in a totally male dominated environment. I think at the time there was probably nearly 2,000 employees within Team Aer Lingus and then Team Aer Lingus on the hangar floor, and there were less than 6 females. So there were 6 females when the year that I started with my colleague Alison. You know, so the percentage you're getting into, you know, decimal points of percentages, still less than 5% of the pilots in the world, particularly at senior levels, are females. So we need to look at, you know, getting back to the basics, as I said, this really young age, getting back into primary school before subject choices have been made. And I do think the likes of the work that you're doing, where you look at formidable females, having role models out there who have gone along, broken down barriers, jumped through glass ceilings, all of these things, and have done it as people who are incredibly competent, not necessarily who happen to be female. You know, and I think there's a distinction there as well. So it's the likes of the work that you're doing, I think, that really promotes that females can, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that's a really important message out there for younger generations to see and have role models, and also mentoring, sponsorship and all of those things as well. And I think we need to make sure that we don't ever pull up the ladder behind us, that we make sure the ladder's firmly down for anybody coming along, and, you know, and engage and endorse them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I know that inspiring the next generation is really important to you. Could you tell me a little bit about any initiatives that you're involved in?
Yeah, so sure. So one of our partner companies is Future Mobility Campus Ireland down in Shannon, and we're involved in a CESAR project with them, with Collins Aerospace and MANA, drone delivery, and Deep Blue, Shannon Airport Group, the Irish Aviation Authority, so on. But part of what we want to do as well with with the Future Mobility Campus Ireland is to look at the Women in Aviation group, and also then look at girls in aviation, and look at sponsoring that. We have events coming up later this year, and it is getting back into that much younger age group. So there's the Girls in Aviation initiative and movement, and that's a global initiative, but really trying to focus that here in Ireland, that we get into schools and we get down talking to schools as well at you know, primary school level. Another thing is here in the Guinness Enterprise Centre, we're in what's called the Liberties in Dublin, which would be quite, you know, over the years, it hasn't necessarily been the most wealthy of areas within the city. So it's, and really it's getting out and doing outreach from here into the community as well. So we're talking to them here. They've set up various different groups here. So we're talking to them about setting up an aviation group here between the aviation companies, where we can reach out to the local community here and really start encouraging. And we're looking at putting a simulator in here, which would be an eVTOL aircraft of the future, and putting a simulator here in the building here, so that we would be able to reach out to local community, local schools, and organize tours and trips and things like that, and actually have it there available for them to show them what the future is, that the future is a reality. So I do think that, but it's really getting back to that young age. The other thing is we're involved in is the I was the founding chair and now the vice chair at the Unmanned Aircraft Association, and we call it the Unmanned Aircraft Association of Ireland, and we're looking now at changing that to be the Uncrewed. So they're small changes, but I think if everybody makes these small changes, it makes the world a very different place for females, and particularly for females in the aviation realm, because it has been traditionally quite a male-dominated environment.
Yeah. I really agree with what you're saying about each action, the cumulative effect of everybody's effort together is the thing that will really change the future. So even if just one step feels like a small action, it's still completely worth it. And I guess just imagine if there was another 8-year-old girl who gets in that flight simulator, and it changes the course of her life by providing that inspiration that you had at a young age, then that would be a really wonderful thing. I guess the final thing to ask is, what would you say to other women who are considering a career in this sector? And it could be young girls who are not yet decided on their career path, or it could be women who are halfway through their career. You've proven yourself that you can change careers as many times as you want. So what would you say to women who are thinking of either starting or actually moving into this sector?
So I think that is do it. That's the real thing. Seek out somebody who's in the sector to have a conversation with, whether they're male, female. It doesn't make a difference. It's really seeking out somebody who's going to be who's going to advocate for you as well, and who's going to give you sound advice. There's no point reaching into a sector that you don't have the skill set for as well, and then feeling as though you haven't. So consider what your skill set is. Don't be afraid, though. Don't be afraid that you have to tick every single box. It's about learning and growing within an industry as well. So make sure that you pick out something that really does, like aviation itself is such an inspiring industry. So pick a sector within it. And it is such a vast, all-encompassing, you can, any degree program or any pathway that you have taken, you can apply what you have learned to the aviation industry. So it's not being over-analytical, it's not being overcritical. And then get involved in associations and things like that. So whether it's women in aviation, whether it's, it doesn't have to be a female group. So I'm the founding chair of the Unmanned Aircraft Association, as I mentioned. As part of that, we founded JEDA, which is the Joint European Drone Associations. And as part of that, I sit on JARIS, which is, looking at the future regulatory environment. And then I'm sitting on the industry stakeholders board steering committee for that as well, which is really bringing people from the industry in to look at having their input into the future regulation. So I think getting involved at all levels, but seek out a mentor as well. Seek out somebody that you can have a coffee with, that you can sit down, that you can bounce things off, that you're comfortable talking to, and really engage with that person. There's so many people out there who are really willing to give their time if they're asked, but you as a person also need to reach out and make sure that you put your hand out to that person and ask them for help and advice. And so that would be my big thing, I think, is looking to somebody in the industry who's been there and done it, and get advice from them. But the other thing is just do it, and don't, take the skill sets that you have. It doesn't have to be from the aviation industry, and look at how they apply to the role that you're looking at fulfilling, but find something that interests and excites you. There's so much going on in this industry, and particularly, with the new advent of advanced air mobility, there's just so much going on, and there's so many opportunities out there. But yeah, find somebody who's your supporter, and who will support you throughout it, and then do it.
Brilliant. That sounds like such good advice, Julie. Thank you so much for joining me today, and all the very best of luck to you and to Avtrain, and with everything that you're achieving already and everything that you have planned for the future. I really do wish you every success.
Thanks, Joe. It's a pleasure to be on here, and thank you so much for the podcast as well. It's really super to see you advocating for females. Thank you.
Thank you very much.